Hello there and welcome to this week's Granny's Garden, the first video of the new year. So happy new year first of all to all of you. Now today's video is about dealing with garden bleeders. Because I've got my loppers in hand, it's obvious that today's video is going to be about some sort of pruning. Normally in my garden in the Northern Hemisphere, I'd be pruning sometime towards late February or throughout the month of March, leaving to one side, of course, those that bloom on old wood, both trees and shrubs, when you wait till they finish flowering before pruning. But there are a group called the bleeders. I have some in my garden, which I'll be showing you, that need to be done when the tree or the shrub is at their most dormant, so the actual blood loss, or sap loss in their case, is at a minimum, which is right about now. So I'm going to be giving you some indicators of the when and how to deal with those bleeders. Now the first question is when. There are two trains of thought here, and they're actually 6 months apart. The first train is saying midsummer. Why midsummer? Because in spring the sap goes way up like a fountain and you've got a huge bleeding problem. By midsummer things have calmed down a lot. The sap has definitely calmed down a lot. The leaves, you can see it, have lost their spring luster. They're turned a darker green. For me, there's not only one, there's two problems for me in this. First of all, I live in Spain. I get really hot summers. There are many areas of the world with hot summers. And if you do any type of pruning in hot temperatures, you stress the tree out of existence. So for me, that's really not an option. But secondly, and more importantly, and not only for hot countries, but for any country, is the fact that it's fully leafed out in summer and you can't see what you're doing. If you want to see the structure of the tree, the shape of the tree, and any problem branches, it's better when they've got absolutely no leaves at all. It makes life a lot easier. So for me, the option is around about late December, early January. Trees are completely dormant, sap is at a minimum, and you can see what you're doing. So what trees are bleeders? Well, in my particular garden, I've got several. I've got a deciduous magnolia, I've got the pine tree, I've got a hornbeam, I've got a silver birch, my Japanese maples, and I think I've got a dogwood. I think that's about it in my garden. Yeah. Have a walk around this time of year and pay special attention to those trees or shrubs you know that are bleeders. Obviously, dead branches you always remove, but have a look at those that are rubbing, and not only those that are rubbing now, but if there's only a tiny separation, you know that as soon as spring comes and as soon as it starts pushing growth and thickening those branches, what looks like that now is going to be rubbing in about 2 or 3 months' time. So deal with it now when you can see what you're doing. So what I'm going to do now is take you with me to the trees I've mentioned before, and I'm going to show you if they need to be pruned, if they don't need to be pruned, and what I am looking for, what you need to look for before getting your loppers working. Now, the first thing I'm going to have a look at is this group of silver birches that I have next to the chill out area in the back garden. I love silver birches and I love them in group. Look at the shape of this tree. Look at those beautiful layers, natural layers, and these delicate little branches that hang down. You don't have to do anything to them. The only thing I'm going to be removing here is this eyesore. You can see it sort of goes dying and finishes there. That's because in this past autumn, in the storm, it got snapped off. And it has to be removed because it wrecks the entire shape. And while I'm at it, I'll come in close because I don't want any growth in the bottom half. Because, of course, I've got a little border under here with nice bulbs, especially in spring, it's full of daffodil bulbs. So I'm going to be removing anything like this while I'm at it that is just growing too low down. So I just remove that with the normal secateurs so that the actual growth I'm looking for starts from here upwards. I'll be removing this one as well, for instance. And basically from that fork upwards is where I leave it. Leaf out, branch out in all its glory. So very little to be done. There's literally only that branch to be taken off and just some minor snips to keep this part clean. Now I'm just getting in close on this one. I've taken the weight off the branch. You can see very clearly here the actual colour. One of the best ways to make sure that you don't damage the colour is to use this the right way around. On the right hand side here you've got the cutting blade and the other side is flat. That flat side should be against the trunk, and that way that protects the colour, because you can see it's about maybe 3 millimeters wide, so that'll go around the colour and then that'll come in and cut, and in actual fact you're protecting with this side, you're protecting the colour itself. So let's see if we can get up close and see if you can see it, but I'm on my own, I've got nobody to hold it, so we'll just zoom in as much as I can with the camera. Now if I come in and I put the cutting side here, I don't know if you can see that, but I would actually be quite easy to damage this colour. If I flip it round and put the flat side against the colour, then no matter how tight or flush against the trunk I have it, the cutting edge is going to be protecting that colour. See, the colour is intact, and I'll just cut in front of it. Now, next thing I'm going to get my curved pruning saw out of this one. The angle isn't bad. Just take a minute to get your angle right. If I was going to go in like that, I'd come straight down and I'd be hitting this part. So I'm just going to angle it slightly like that, so I come out here. So just take a little minute to make that first groove, make that first angle, and then off we go. Nice cut. Next one isn't quite so easy. I haven't got much room sort of between two trunks. What I'm going to do is try and get the loppers in and get rid of this, and then be able to come in with a circular saw without banging into this one and making any sort of wound on this one. So let's see what I can do. First of all, I want to get rid of a bit more of the loppers. If I go down, what I'm probably going to be ending up is hitting this. So I might try angling it up. I'm going to make a first cut here though. See, you've got to be very careful here, because if I angle it, I'm going to end up moving against this one and hurting this one. I just want to take a little minute to see how I'm going to do this. Probably I'm going to do it this angle. Yeah, maybe that angle. Okay, just going to take it nice and slowly. There's no rush. Never rush with pruning. Now my cut is up as far as here, so I want to go in now and get the same angle going down. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I'm going to meet up with it. The dogs are going crazy, but that's fine. We're concentrating on what we're doing. As you can see, I'm only using the tip of the saw now, only using the tip. Will you be quiet, doggies? Right, here we have the first of the two Japanese maples in this garden. This one is a shindasheshu, and the one at the bottom of the garden is a sangokaku. Both of them are Japanese maples, both of them are completely different. This one has an open shape in layers, and the sangokaku is a vessel shape. Now, when you're talking about the Japanese maple, out you go. When you're talking about the Japanese maple, it's very important to take your time when you are pruning. Out you go. The first thing I want to do is remove the really bottom branches here that are actually banging against the top of the flower pot. So I'm just going to get my pruners out now and very quickly remove those which are the very obvious ones. Now we're going to go for the ones that rub together, and there are some, 2, 3 or maybe 4 branches that really are rubbing. So I'm going to get in close so you can have a look. Now here's a clear example. At some stage this little point broke off, because it's not a clean cut, it obviously broke off, and this caused the latent buds to spread out. Now I've got 3 spreading out, and this one here is rubbing against this one and this one. When you are going to make a cut, it's not just a question, now I'm going to remove this one. Just have a look to see if that's the best one to remove or not. For instance, this one is heading back towards the centre of the tree and is not a good one. So I'm going to get rid of, actually, in fact, this one first. Now I've got rid of one that's growing back towards the centre of the tree, which is important. But this one is still going to rub here. If you follow it up with me, is crossing against this one and this one. So in actual fact, although the one that's rubbing is this one, I'm going to remove the one below it. I'm just going to tidy up the top of this now. There we go. Let's have a look at this one. This is new growth, and this is a slightly older stem. Now, it's a very spindly one, and another little spindly one. This one is growing nicely out where it should. This one is growing back and is crossing over with this one. So I'm actually going to get rid of this side, leaving this side to get fatter and thicker in this coming growing season. So let's get rid of this one. If you come down here a bit, to the inside of the tree, you'll see that this one is quite bushy. It's got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 branches off of it, and it's completely thickening up the centre of the tree, which we don't want. So I'm going to come in and get rid of that one also. The same thing with this one. Too much on the inside of a tree. You need air to circulate and light to get in always. Now, as regarding this one, it's crossing out from the centre of the tree, but for the moment I'm quite liking it. What I don't like is a spindly little one here, so I'm going to get rid of that one as well. Now, as you can see, we're already opening out the centre of that tree. We're not actually looking at the shape of the tree for the moment, we're just looking at the ones that could possibly grow into the centre or are rubbing at the moment. Now we're going to have a look at this side of the tree. This is dead. The top of this one is dead, so we're going to get rid of that. And this is also dead, so we're going to get rid of that. Right, now if we have a look at this one, this starts off as a single branch, comes down, it splits here into two, and then goes off here. And it's rubbing here, and rubbing here. And it's also going through the centre of the tree, which I don't want, so I'm going to get rid of that one as well. Quick snip here, and it's gone. Again, into the centre, we don't want that. And then I've got a weird one here. It comes out here, and then instead of sort of like bending down like this, it's gone back on itself and it's going into the centre of the tree and it's getting all wound up in these two. So I'm going to get rid of that because I don't like the shape of it. Keep walking around the tree, because as you walk around the tree you see things you didn't see from a different angle. As you can see here, there's a thin branch coming out. Now we all know that thin branches get thicker and thicker. So this is going to obviously very soon, if not this growing season, definitely the following, is going to have problems with this one here. I'm going to give it a quick snip and solve any problems before they even start. The last thing you do is have a look at the general shape. Now this is a very young tree, so I'm not going to go hell for leather on this tree at the moment. I'm going to leave it grow up and mature and show me, or let the tree do the talking. There's just one last branch you're going to take off, and it's going to be this one here, because it does sort of like, it's going to fill in this centre part which I want open. So that's the last one I'm going to take off in this growing season. But as you can see, because there's no leaves, you can see perfectly the structure of this tree. So we're now going to go down to the woodland area to have a look at the second Japanese maple, which is a Sango Kako, and you'll see that the shape is completely different than this one, which is the Shindo Seisho. This is the Sango Kako, otherwise known as the coral bark maple, because of the colour, the bright colour of its actual stems on the new growth. Now, as you can see, it's completely different than the other one. This is a vessel shape, and therefore I'm looking for is a shape that's going upward and slightly outwards. Now, again, this is a young tree, so I'm not going to be doing very much. There is, however, a lot of thicket going on down here that I don't want, so I'm just going to clarify some of this thicket down here and leave the rest of it mature and tell me what it needs doing in the next growing season. Well, as you can see, most of the ones I'm taking off here, I've got to do with shape and also the fact that they're growing to the inside of the tree or actually rubbing. So I'm just going to take this last one off now, like that. And then I just want to have a look at shape. So we go around the front now of the tree and just want to have a look at the shape before I finish. Let's come out here. Okay. All of this is going up nicely, but if you have a look at this branch, this starts here and is coming all the way out here. And it's not got the shape of a sangocaco, which should be like a more vessel shape. So in actual fact, I'm going to take this off. It's a nice branch, but it's got the wrong shape. So I'm going to remove this one. And now automatically you will see that the shape of the tree has been restored. Now all we need to do is go over to that pine tree and get the ladder out. Now the first thing I want to show you is this pine tree. Now what I've got to do here is actually remove this first layer. I'm going to limit up, removing this first layer of branches. On the left it's very easy to see what has happened. You can see it is just touching the house. It's about literally less than a foot between the actual tiles of the roof and the branch itself. So when it is actually stormy, it's already banging. So if it grows anymore, it's going to cause problems with those roof tiles. So that's obviously got to be removed. On the other side, it's growing straight into the box elder. So I'm removing this first layer. I'm going to be leaving this as it's going to keep growing up. And on the back part, it's growing into the neighbour's olive tree. Now with any type of branch this size, what you need to do is a 3-cut. Undercut, overcut and flush 2. If I didn't do that and I started cutting this large branch, I'd only be halfway through when this large branch, the weight of it, would start bearing down and would actually rip the trunk or the bark off the tree, leaving a very big open gaping wound, which is an entry point for all type of fungus and infections. So the first thing you need to do is make a cut underneath and then a cut over. And if it starts ripping down, it'll reach that little cut that you made underneath and then stop, which is what you want. And only when all this weight is removed do you then go the flush in. And when I talk about flush in, never flush against the actual bark itself. Flush to the collar and not flush straight to the trunk. Not damaging the collar in any way. That is very important. If not, the branch or the wound will not heal. Now this is a perfect example of what would have happened if you hadn't made that undercut. As soon as he started, my husband Miguel started cutting through, the weight of the branch caused it to rip backwards and it met where he did the undercut, and therefore that was the extent of the damage. If he had not made that undercut and he had started cutting straight off here, it would have ripped the whole way down this bark and caused a huge gaping wound. That is why it's so necessary to take the weight of the branch off first. Now what he's going to do without the weight of the branch behind is, staying left of this famous collar that we've talked about, is just cut it down and away. Perfect, clean cut. Once again, perfect example. What Miguel is doing now is taking down the nesting boxes. It's time to get them cleared out and cleaned out and disinfected for next year. We'll take out all the old nesting material and any sort of like insect or wasp nest that might have nested there in the corner. And then we'll rehang them when they're nice and dry and disinfected with just a bit of sawdust for the winter, because they do take refuge when in the storms inside, and then have them nice and clean, waiting for next mating season or next nesting season. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. This, for me, is what marks the end of a growing season. The pruning of the bleeders, for me, the very, very, very end, as I said, it's late December or early January, the end of completion of a growing season. Of course, next February or next month, You start all the growing season all over again with the planting of the seeds, and then of course March comes the actual pruning, the early pruning of the year. But for the moment, from me, with my hands nice and full of this big pine tree, I'll see you next week here in Granny's garden. Bye bye now.